Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a translator, which means I work from home. Portuguese to English mostly, sometimes French. It's steady work and it lets me avoid the commute, which in Porto can be a nightmare depending on where you're going. I'm home all day, every day. My office is my living room. My commute is from my bed to my couch. When I first moved in, I brought my bike. Nothing fancy, just a regular city bike I use for getting around. The building has this tiny ground floor entryway, maybe 2 meters of space total, where everyone stores stuff. Bikes mostly, but also the occasional box of junk someone's meaning to throw out but hasn't gotten around to yet. My bike went there on day 1. Everyone in the building knows it's mine. It's been in the same spot for 2 years, right by the wall, where it's out of the way. Things were fine until last month. New guy moved into the 3rd floor apartment. I saw him moving in, helped him carry a box up the stairs because our building doesn't have an elevator, and he looked like he was struggling. Seemed normal enough. Mid-30s maybe, dressed like he was trying to look casual, but everything was expensive. You know the type. 2 days after he moved in, I went downstairs to get my bike, and there was this massive vintage motorcycle parked in the entryway, right in front of my bike, wheel to wheel. It had this fancy tarp covering it, the kind that probably cost more than my bike did. I figured it was temporary. Maybe he was just parking it there while he figured out a better spot. It wasn't temporary. The next day, it was still there, and the day after that. This motorcycle became a permanent fixture, parked directly in front of my bike in a space that barely fits 1 vehicle, let alone 2. I had to move his motorcycle every single time I wanted to use my bike, and this thing was heavy. Easily 200 kilos, maybe more. I'm not exactly weak, but shifting this beast every morning was not how I wanted to start my day. After a week of this, I left a note. Polite, straightforward, just asking if he could leave some space so I could access my bike without moving his motorcycle. I taped it to his door. No response. I waited 3 days. Nothing changed. So I caught him in the hallway one morning and asked him about the motorcycle situation. I explained that I'd left a note and wondered if he could move it a bit to the side so I could get to my bike without having to shift his motorcycle every time. He told me there was plenty of room and I should just go around it. I tried to explain that there really wasn't enough space and that I had to physically move his motorcycle every single day just to access my own bike. He said it was fine where it was. Then he just walked away without waiting for me to say anything else. This went on for 3 weeks. Every single day I go downstairs, move his motorcycle, get my bike out and silently hate this guy a little more. I almost dropped the thing once when it shifted wrong and nearly went over. My heart was in my throat thinking about how much it would cost if I damaged it. Here's the thing though, this guy also had an expensive sound system. I know because he played music at 7 in the morning on weekends. Loud music. Really loud. American classic rock, the kind of stuff my dad used to play. Led Zeppelin, The Doors, that sort of thing. The walls in our building are thin. Sound carries. When I first heard it, I thought maybe he didn't realize how loud it was. But after the motorcycle situation, I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt. Our building has this old intercom system from the 80s. When someone buzzes your apartment, a speaker goes off inside. And these speakers are loud. Like, wake you from a dead sleep loud. You can't turn them down or adjust the volume. It's just one setting and that setting is intrusive. I started buzzing his apartment. Not constantly, just whenever I thought about it, which turned out to be fairly often. 9:30 on a Tuesday morning while I was working on a translation, buzz. 3 in the afternoon on Thursday when I got up to make coffee, buzz. 8 at night on Saturday when I was watching TV, buzz. I'd press his button, wait a few seconds, then go back to whatever I was doing. Sometimes I'd do it twice in a row. Sometimes I'd wait hours between buzzes. There was no pattern. That was the point. After about 5 days of this, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs while I was heading out to meet a friend. It was him. He looked tired. He stopped me and asked if I'd been buzzing his apartment. I acted confused and asked him what he meant. He explained that Someone had been pressing his intercom button constantly for days now. I pretended to be surprised and suggested that the system must be acting up. I said these old intercoms are confusing and that I probably hit his button by mistake a few times. I apologized. He said it had been way more than a few times. I just shrugged and said, that's how it is with all the buttons looking the same. He stared at me for a long moment. He didn't believe me. But what was he going to say? Accuse me of doing it on purpose. Based on what evidence? He went back upstairs without another word. 2 days later, I went down to get my bike and the motorcycle was gone from its usual spot. I had a brief moment of panic thinking maybe something had happened to it. Then I saw it, moved to the other side of the entryway, parked neatly against the opposite wall. Plenty of space for my bike now. Plenty of space for everything. I haven't had to move his motorcycle since. And I haven't buzzed his apartment either. Probably. I'm protective of my mom. When I was 8, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. I remember sitting in the hospital waiting room while she had surgery, my dad holding my hand so tight it hurt. She beat it, but 2 years later, she had a stroke. Then came the autoimmune disorder that left her exhausted for months. Through it all, she never stopped being the best mom she could be. She still made my lunches, still came to my school events, still asked about my day, even when I could see how tired she was. So yeah, I'm protective. Sue me. My friend had been planning this spa day for weeks. We graduated high school a few months ago and wanted to do something relaxing before we both started college. I thought it would be nice to do it at my house since we had all the supplies and my mom had offered to help out with snacks and stuff. When she arrived that Saturday afternoon, everything seemed normal. We set up in my bedroom with our face mask kits, nail polish, and a playlist going in the background. My mom knocked on the door about 20 minutes in. My mom told us she'd brought popcorn and found those fancy sheet masks I wanted. I thanked her and told her she was the best. My friend smiled and thanked her too. Mom left the door cracked open and headed back downstairs. That's when my friend started talking and she told me she'd been reading about this theory lately and said it was really fascinating. I asked her what theory she was talking about. She explained that it was about how people's insides start to match their outsides when they get older, especially in middle age and when they're elderly. I was painting my toenails and only half listening. I asked her what she meant by that. She told me to think about it. She said wrinkles don't just appear randomly, they form because of the expressions we make repeatedly. If you frown a lot, you get frown lines. If you're angry all the time, it shows on your face. So if someone looks older than they actually are, it's usually because they've lived a life full of negativity and hatred. I stopped painting mid-stroke and looked up at her. I told her that's not how aging works. She insisted it kind of is though. She said your face molds itself based on how you use it, and called it science. I argued back that genetics and sun exposure and health conditions affect aging, not whether someone is a good or bad person. She shrugged like I was missing the point. We went back to our spa activities for a minute, but I could tell she was still thinking about it. Then she looked toward my bedroom door where my mom had walked away. She asked me how old my mom was. I told her she was 52 and asked why she wanted to know. She said, and then commented that my mom looked much older. She said her glabellar lines and age spots seemed more like those of a woman in her 60s. I felt my stomach drop. The way she said it was so casual, like she was commenting on the weather. I asked her if she was calling my mom a bad person right now just because she has wrinkles. She said, what? No, and insisted it was just an observation. She said she wasn't saying anything mean. I pointed out that she just said that looking old means someone has lived a life of negativity and hatred. Then she said my mom looks old. I asked how that wasn't calling her a hateful person. She accused me of twisting her words and said she was just saying what she noticed. My hands were shaking. I put down the nail polish before I spilled it everywhere. I told her that my mom has survived breast cancer, a stroke, and an autoimmune disorder in the past 10 years. I asked if she knew what that does to a person's body. I asked if she had any idea what those treatments do to your skin and hair and everything else. I said my mom had been through hell and back and she's still here, still taking care of me, still being an amazing person. And I said she was sitting here saying, my mom looks old because she's full of hate. She told me I needed to calm down and said it wasn't that deep. I asked her how it wasn't that deep. I said she insulted my mom in my own house after she just brought her snacks. She said this is exactly what she's talking about. She complained that it's so hard being friends with me because I'm so reactive. She accused me of blowing everything out of proportion. I told her to get out. She asked me to excuse her like she didn't hear me right. I repeated myself and told her to get out of my house now. She said I was being ridiculous and claimed she was just making conversation. I said she was being cruel. Whether she meant to be or not, she was cruel. And I wasn't going to sit here and listen to her talk about my mom like that. She stared at me for a second, probably waiting for me to back down. When I didn't, she stood up and started gathering her stuff. She told me fine, but not to expect her to come running back when I realized how dramatic I'm being. I told her I wouldn't. She left, and I heard her car pull away a few minutes later. I sat on my bedroom floor still shaking, wondering if I'd overreacted. Then my mom knocked on the door again. She asked if everything was okay because she heard the door slam. I told her my friend left. I explained that she said some really awful things about her, and I asked her to leave. Mom sat down next to me on the floor and asked what kind of things. I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. She said that I should know she does look older than 52 and that she's okay with that. I said, but it's not because she's a bad person. It's because she's been through so much. She agreed and said she knows that. I know that. And that's what matters. She hugged me, and I felt better. Later that night, I posted about what happened online, asking if I was wrong for thinking my friend was calling my mom a bad person. The responses came flooding in, almost all of them saying I was right to be upset. 3 days later, my friend and I had mutual connections, and apparently several people had seen my post and reached out to her about it. She tried to defend herself, but everyone else saw through her pseudo-intellectual nonsense. By the end of the week, she'd posted a half-hearted apology online that said sorry if anyone was offended, which made things even worse for her. I never responded to her apology. I didn't need to. I'm a ride operator at an amusement park. My station is the ring toss game right next to the Thunderbolt roller coaster. I grew up in this town with my mom and 2 younger sisters after dad left. Mom raised us on her own, and I learned early to work hard and keep my head down. Funland was always the highlight of summer for me as a kid. Getting a job here at 18 felt natural. The work taught me patience, especially dealing with frustrated parents and overstimulated kids. Most days were fine, just managing the game booth and making sure everyone had fun. That busy Saturday afternoon in July changed everything. It was one of our busiest days of the season. The temperature hit 95 degrees by noon. The Thunderbolt had a wait time of over 2 hours, and my ring toss station next to it was packed with people killing time in line. The queue snaked around my booth, and I was swamped with customers trying to win oversized stuffed animals. Each game cost $5 for 3 rings. Around 3 in the afternoon, I noticed a woman pushing through the crowd with her son. The kid looked about 10 years old and seemed embarrassed, tugging at her sleeve and telling her to stop. She ignored him completely. She walked right up to the front of the Thunderbolt line, cutting past at least 100 people. She told people to excuse her because she needed to get through. My co-worker manning the ride entrance shook his head. He was a college student like me named Jake, who'd been working there for 2 years. He told her the line started way back there and everyone had been waiting. She snapped back that her son had a medical condition and needed to ride right now. The kid looked mortified and whispered something to her. She brushed him off. Jake said he understood, but they didn't have a fast pass system at the park. He explained that if she had documentation of a disability, she could speak to guest services about it. The woman's face turned bright red. She yelled that this was discrimination, and she wasn't going to wait 2 hours in the heat. She demanded to speak to a manager. Jake radioed our supervisor Mike, who arrived within minutes. She caused such a scene that other guests were pulling out their phones to record. Mike politely explained the same policy to her and offered to escort them to guest services. He suggested they could get priority access if they had proper documentation proving the medical need. She refused to go to guest services. She said her son was going to pass out from the heat any minute. The kid actually looked fine, just deeply embarrassed. Mike offered to get them bottled water while they waited in line like everyone else. She left in anger, dragging her embarrassed son behind her. He kept looking back at us with an apologetic expression. I went back to managing my booth, helping a little girl who finally won a giant teddy bear after her 8th try. Her parents had spent $40 on games trying to win it for her. About 30 minutes later, around 3:30 in the afternoon, I heard popping sounds. At first, I thought it was balloons or maybe something from one of the game booths. Then I saw the sparks flying through the air. Fireworks were shooting up right above the Thunderbolt queue. People started screaming and running in every direction. The fireworks weren't just going up into the sky, they were coming back down into the crowd. I saw that same woman from earlier standing on a maintenance platform behind the fence. She was lighting fireworks from a large bag and launching them toward the line. Her son was nowhere near her. She screamed at people to clear out and move somewhere else. People were panicking, trampling each other, trying to escape the chaos. A teenager near me got hit in the shoulder by a firework and fell to the ground screaming in pain. His shirt caught fire for a second before his friend patted it out. Another man was clutching his face with blood running between his fingers. A woman tripped while running and twisted her ankle badly. Parents were grabbing their kids and fleeing in all directions. I grabbed my radio and called security. I told them we had an emergency at Thunderbolt and someone was firing fireworks into the crowd. I said we needed help right away because people were injured. I also yelled at people near my booth to take cover behind the game stations. Within 3 minutes, security guards were rushing toward the scene. The woman was still launching fireworks, completely focused on clearing the line. She had already gone through half her bag. 2 guards tackled her and wrestled the lighter away while a third kicked over her bag of fireworks. She fought them the entire time, screaming about her rights and how everyone was being unreasonable. She bit one of the security guards on the arm hard enough to drop blood. The park went into emergency mode. They evacuated the entire Thunderbolt area and called ambulances. Mike shut down all the rides in that section. I helped guide people away from the chaos while paramedics arrived. Jake was helping the injured teenager while waiting for medical help. 7 people ended up injured. That teenager took a firework to the shoulder and had second-degree burns. A woman had burns on her arms from shielding her daughter. The man with a face injury needed 12 stitches above his eyebrow. The woman who twisted her ankle had to be taken to the hospital. 3 other people had minor burns and smoke inhalation. The police arrived within 10 minutes and arrested the woman on the spot. She was still yelling when they put her in handcuffs. She screamed that this was assault and they couldn't arrest her. She insisted she was just trying to get her son on the ride. One officer told her to stop resisting. She kicked at him and spit in his direction. Another officer looked at her like she had 3 heads. He told her she had injured multiple people with illegal fireworks and she was going to jail. She said all those people should have just moved out of the way. They found her son sitting on a bench near the entrance, crying. Security stayed with him until Child Protective Services arrived around 5 in the afternoon. The kid kept apologizing to everyone around him. He said his mom hadn't been acting right for weeks and he didn't know she would do something like this. He mentioned she'd been fired from her job 3 weeks ago and had been angry ever since. He said she'd been talking about how people needed to respect her more. It broke my heart. The park shut down early that day at 6 in the evening instead of the usual 10. All of us staff members had to give statements to the police. I described everything I saw from her first confrontation at the ride entrance to her launching fireworks into the crowd. Jake gave his statement about the initial encounter. Mike described trying to help her and offering alternatives. The security footage backed up everything we said. The cameras even caught her buying the fireworks from a roadside stand 2 days earlier. Over the next few weeks, we heard updates through the local news. The woman was charged with 7 counts of assault, multiple counts of reckless endangerment, illegal use of explosives, and resisting arrest. Her bail was set at $50,000. She couldn't afford it and stayed in jail until her trial. She tried to claim temporary insanity. The prosecution showed she had purchased the fireworks 2 days earlier and had been planning it. They also found text messages on her phone where she told a friend she was going to make people regret disrespecting her. The judge wasn't sympathetic to her case at all. She got sentenced to 2 years in prison. She also had to pay $75,000 in restitution to the injured victims. Child Protective Services removed her son from her custody permanently. I heard he went to live with his grandmother in another state. His grandmother filed for full custody and got it within a month. Apparently, he's doing much better now and is in therapy. The injured guests all recovered, though some took months. That teenager has a permanent scar on his shoulder and had to do physical therapy for 6 weeks. The park settled with all of them for undisclosed amounts. They also gave all the injured guests lifetime passes to the park once they recovered. The park upgraded security protocols to prevent anything like this from happening again. We now have security checkpoints at all entrances with metal detectors. Bags are searched before people enter. Staff are trained specifically to handle aggressive guests before situations escalate. We have a 3-strike policy now where problem guests get removed after 3 warnings. I'm a funeral director. Got into it kinda by accident, honestly. My uncle ran a funeral home and needed help one summer during college. I was studying business administration and had no real direction in life. Figured I'd make some cash doing office work, filing papers, answering phones, that sort of thing. First week there, one of his embalmers quit without notice. Uncle was desperate and asked if I'd help move a body from the cooler to the prep room. I'll be honest, I was nervous. Never been around a dead person before except at viewings where they're all fixed up and peaceful looking. But I needed the job and he needed the help. Turned out I had a knack for it. Didn't faint, didn't get squeamish, just did what needed doing. Uncle started training me properly after that. By the time I graduated, I'd switched my major to mortuary science. My friends thought I was insane, but I'd found something I was actually good at. Something that mattered, helping families during the worst time of their lives. The pay was solid too, better than most of my classmates were making at their corporate jobs. Bought a house at 26? Can't complain. So anyway, this happened on a Tuesday morning. I had a full day ahead of me. 2 embalmings scheduled, a family consultation at 10, and a service at 2. I'd woken up late, skipped breakfast, and desperately needed caffeine before facing any of it. There's a coffee shop right between my apartment and the funeral home. I stopped in still wearing my suit. I always wear suits to work. People expect it, and honestly, it makes the job feel more professional. You're representing someone's loved one. You should look the part. The line was long, which figured everyone else had the same idea. I stood there scrolling through my phone, checking the schedule, making sure I had all the details right for the afternoon service. That's when I noticed her staring. She was maybe 40, dressed in yoga pants and an oversized sweater. The kind of person who clearly had nowhere important to be. She kept looking at me, then looking away, then looking back. I ignored it at first. Sometimes people stare at the suit. Makes them think you're a lawyer or something. But she kept doing it. Finally, she leaned closer with this really sympathetic expression on her face. She asked if I was going to a funeral. Her voice was all soft and caring, like she was consoling me. I looked up from my phone and asked her what she meant. She repeated her question, adding that she was sorry for my loss. Oh, that's what this was about. I told her no, I actually worked at a funeral home. I was a funeral director. I figured that would be it. Most people just nod and back off when they realize. Death makes people uncomfortable. They don't want to think about it, let alone talk about it with a stranger in a coffee shop. But not this woman. Her eyes lit up with this weird curiosity. She asked me how I could do that job. She wanted to know if it bothered me to touch dead people. I was tired, really tired. I had gotten maybe 5 hours of sleep because I'd been up late finishing paperwork, and I had a long day ahead of me. I wasn't in the mood for this conversation, but something about the way she asked, like I was some kind of circus freak, just irritated me. I told her not really. I explained that you stop thinking of them as people pretty fast. They're more like heavy furniture that leaks sometimes. I mentioned that the smell gets in your hair though, and that part sucks. Her smile faltered a little, but she was still standing there, still waiting for more. So I gave her more. I told her about a guy from last week who'd been dead in his apartment for 9 days in summer. I described how there were maggots everywhere and how we had to scrape him off the floor in sections. The color drained from her face. She actually took a step back, but I was committed now. I added that the eyes are bad for new staff. I explained how they dry out and get sticky, but you get used to it eventually. She just stared at me, didn't say a word. Her mouth was slightly open like she wanted to respond but couldn't figure out how. The barista called out that my coffee was ready. I grabbed it from the counter and took a long sip, looked back at the woman. I shrugged and told her that, anyway, the pay's good. I walked out, looked back through the window when I reached my car and saw her leaving the line without ordering. She was on her phone, probably texting someone about the horrible person she'd just met. Look, I'm not proud of it. That guy I described, he was real, and it was awful. His family was devastated that he'd been alone that long. We worked hard to make him presentable for them, and I held his sister while she cried at the viewing. That's the part of the job that matters. But I'm so tired of people treating what I do like it's some morbid curiosity, like I'm supposed to perform for them, explain all the gory details so they can feel something. It's a job, an important one. I help families say goodbye with dignity. And sometimes when someone won't take a polite hint, you give them exactly what they're asking for. I'm 32 years old and work as a dental hygienist. My husband thinks I'm crazy for getting excited about discount socks, but he doesn't understand the thrill of finding something cute for practically nothing. Every Sunday we go to Target for our weekly shopping trip. It's become our routine over the past few years. He gets the practical stuff while I hunt for deals. This past Sunday started like any other. We walked in around 2 p.m. and split up right away. My husband headed straight for the pharmacy section to grab his vitamins and protein powder. I took a detour through the clearance area like I always do. I always check those bins near the women's section because you never know what you'll find. Sometimes it's junk, but sometimes you score something great for next to nothing. I was digging through a messy bin full of socks and underwear, all marked down and jumbled together. Most of it was plain white socks or underwear in weird sizes that nobody wanted. I had to dig deep to find anything worth buying. Then I spotted them near the bottom of the bin. A pair of ankle socks with little sharks on them. The price tag said $1. I pulled them out and smiled. They were adorable. The sharks had little faces and the background was light blue, perfect for wearing around the house or to work under my scrubs. Nobody would see them at work, but I would know they were there, and that would make me happy. I kept looking through the bin to see if there were any other good patterns. Maybe something with cats or cool designs. Maybe another pair of shark socks in a different color. I was pretty focused on sorting through the chaos, moving aside the plain stuff to see what was underneath. That's when someone walked up next to me. She looked young, maybe early 20s. She had her phone in one hand and a Starbucks cup in the other. She didn't say excuse me or anything. She just stood there for a second looking at the socks in my hand. Then she spoke very casually and told me that those were hers. I wasn't sure what she meant at first. I looked at her, then at the socks in my hand, then back at her. I asked if she meant the socks. She said yes. I looked down at them again, confused. They didn't have her name on them. There was no basket nearby with her stuff in it. There was no cart with her purse in it. I had just pulled them from the bin myself. I told her I grabbed these because they were cute. She explained that she was looking at them first and came back for them. She said it like it was obvious, like I should have known they were spoken for somehow. That's when it clicked. She thought because she had seen them earlier they were somehow reserved for her, like the clearance bin at Target operated on some kind of honor system I didn't know about. I told her I was getting this pair and suggested maybe there were more in the bin. I even gestured at the bin like she could look for herself. I tried to be polite about it. I had already looked through most of the bin and I was pretty sure there weren't any more shark socks. But I said it anyway, hoping she'd take the hint and move on. She didn't move. She said no and insisted she was going to buy those socks because she was just here looking at them. She emphasized the words like that made it more true. Her tone was firm now, like she expected me to just hand them over. She even held out her hand a little, like she was waiting for me to give them to her. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. The people-pleasing part of me that hates confrontation started to kick in. My brain was already trying to justify giving them to her. They're just socks. They're only $1. It's not a big deal. Let her have them. It's not worth the awkwardness. But then another part of my brain spoke up. The part that was tired of always backing down. I thought about how ridiculous this whole situation was. I found them in a public clearance bin. I picked them up with my own hands. She wasn't even holding them when I got here. She had walked away from them to do whatever else she was doing. If she wanted them so badly, she should have just bought them the first time, or at least kept them in her hand while she shopped. That's what I do when I find something good in a clearance bin. I hold on to it so nobody else takes it. I told her okay and said I was going to meet my husband buy the vitamins. I started walking away, gripping the socks a little tighter than necessary. I wasn't trying to be rude, but I also wasn't going to stand there and argue about dollar socks with a stranger. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. I hate confrontation, even small ones like this. When I turned the corner toward the pharmacy section, I heard her voice behind me. She called out that she collects sharks. Her voice had a pleading tone to it now, like that information was supposed to change everything. I stopped for half a second. That little voice in my head started up again. She collects sharks. Maybe it means more to her than it does to you. Maybe you should go back and give them to her. Maybe you're being selfish over $1 socks. But then I kept walking. Because you know what? I work hard. I work 40 hours a week cleaning teeth and dealing with difficult patients. I budget carefully because I have to. I clip coupons and wait for sales and get excited about clearance bins because that's how I treat myself. That's the only way I can afford little luxuries. And this girl who probably walked away from these socks to go get her $5 coffee thought she could just come back and claim them like they were on hold. Like I was supposed to be the store clerk holding items for her. I found my husband in the vitamin aisle. He was comparing 2 different bottles of fish oil, reading the labels carefully. He does this every time even though he always buys the same brand. He looked up when I walked over. He asked if I found anything good. I held up the socks and told him shark socks for $1. He smiled and said nice. He knows I love finding weird socks in the clearance bins. He didn't ask why I looked a little flustered or why my cheeks were red. We finished shopping, grabbing the rest of the items on our list. Laundry detergent for $11.99, bread for $2.49, milk for $3.79. The usual stuff. We checked out about 20 minutes later. The cashier was a teenager who barely looked at us. She scanned everything quickly, including the socks. I paid my $1.07 with tax for them. I watched her put them in the bag with a weird sense of satisfaction. On the way to the car, I saw her again, the girl from the clearance bin. She was walking out of the store empty-handed, talking loudly on her phone. She was telling whoever was on the other end that some lady totally took the socks she was gonna buy and that it was so rude. She said she couldn't believe someone would be so selfish over $1. She said she had been looking at them for like 10 minutes before she went to get her coffee. I kept walking. My husband didn't notice her or what she was saying. He was already heading toward our car with the cart. I put the bags in the trunk and got in the passenger seat. The whole drive home I kept thinking about it. Was I rude? Should I have just let her have them? Was I really being selfish? But the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got. Not at her specifically, but at the expectation. The assumption that I should have just handed them over because she said so. Because she claimed she saw them first. Because she collects sharks. None of that mattered. I got to them first when it counted. When we got home, I unpacked the groceries and put everything away. I tossed the socks in the laundry basket with the rest of our clothes. I washed them that night with a load of darks. I wore them the next morning to work under my scrubs. They made me smile every time I looked down at my feet during the day. My co-worker even noticed them when we were in the break room during lunch. She said they were cute socks. I thanked her and told her they were $1 at Target. She said it was a nice find and asked if there were more. I told her I didn't think so, but she could check. I didn't tell her about the girl who tried to claim them. It felt silly to even bring up. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.